All right, welcome everyone. I want to take today to discuss ownership and who are owners and so on. But again, thank you for joining the webcast today. So we'll start off with our webcast today with a little bit of an agenda, the intro to the company. Some of you may or may not have be clients with us. I want to give you just some background there. We'll talk about where we've been so far in the series and how many, or what we've talked about so far. I want to talk about those owners and why would we want to take ownership, and how can taking ownership drive outcomes, and how can we, affect what is going to end up being our building and our data set that we have to eventually manage in facility management and operations. Today we are going to talk about the platform a little bit. We've tried to stay high level and focus on theories and concepts of how things can happen, and alluded to the tools that we obviously represent regarding whether it be Autodesk or Leica tools for some of that reality capture that we saw previously, those kinds of things. But then we'll wrap it up, or I should say, we're going to dive into that pre-construction, construction management and closeout aspect, which is the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And then we'll wrap it up with some closing remarks and take any questions that you have. So about IMAGINiT. If you have not worked with us or not a client, by all means, this is it's important to understand who we are as a company. We are under the, with the RAND Worldwide umbrella. We IMAGINiT work with some of these partners you can see in front of you. Mostly today, certainly we'll focus on some of the background and Autodesk solutions, indeed, but also, again, kind of allude back to some of the things we've done previously with our reality capture and our partnership with Leica and so on. Let alone maybe some of the visualization and the epic games side. So as needed with with the experts that you will be referring back to in some of my previous some of these previous webcasts that I've done with Mark and Jason, you may or may not have engaged with them, but ultimately they've handed off to us for this later aspect of project design and getting into the construction side. So ultimately, any questions that you ever have about our partnerships and how we can impact your business, please do reach out. And so a few things that we try to really focus our efforts on with our obviously training and our implementation and our technical bench really generally. So we have the ability to partner with you to take a look at your process and help you to understand where there may be gaps, things like that, and really just help you to promote a collaborative environment within your company. We work with you to develop strategic plans such that we can ultimately achieve our goals and objectives in a given along a given path. And we've had, like I said, technical bench. We have a lot of folks that work on our teams that have been doing this for quite a long time. So we have the ability in the context of that historical reference of how we can impact your business. And as we saw on the last slide with the Ascent side, we have really some of the best content and capabilities with learning management and upskilling workforces and making sure that you're able to really stay up with the times and the latest and greatest technology and information. So today, part 4, take ownership, pre-con, construction management, and closeout. This is what we're focusing on today. And then we have our next in the series, part 5, coming up. That will be once we get into this next phase and kind of once ownership has taken hold and we're actually into the life cycle, the last part of the life cycle of our building, which is to operate. And we'll focus on that, and that's coming up here in a few weeks. So I have a little video here that's kind of a recap of what we've seen so far. So I will play this and I'll just do a little bit of narration as we go. So as we talked about so far, we've got the simulation and analysis of our factory, and you can see the 3D capability to simulate our throughput and do all of those things. And as we saw earlier in perhaps the last event, we talked about clash analysis and really just making sure that we're optimizing our throughput. Okay, this isn't going to let me pause it, so we'll have to just go back to the beginning each time. So ultimately, as you evolve your facility, you're going to be utilizing, like in this context, this is where construction and your engineering for your internal groups may collaborate. So we have that 2D world collaborating with the 3D world, and the contractors and their systems collaborating with you, performing clash detection like we see here. Hey, want to make sure that we're going to be able to update our facility as the changes occur over time. And you can see really taking that 2D, collaborating it, turning it into 3D, bringing these two worlds together, making sure that the information is able to be overlaid and optimized, things like that. That's where the Autodesk platform, which we'll see here a little bit later, allows us to tie all of these things together in a common data environment, a single source of truth. You can see all the collaborators that are in this entire life cycle. This is the tool that, these are some of the tools that let us bring it all together. Okay, the analytics, the things like this, insights that we get out of these platforms ultimately allow us to get through all stages into that operations. And you can see here kind of all the pieces and phases of that life cycle. So I know it's kind of flashing through here fairly quickly, but ultimately pretty good encapsulation of all the things that we have talked about and ultimately are important to us as a factory owner and operator. All right, so again, today we're focusing on the BIM and fabrication and construction side. We're focusing on making the building and making the facility, taking that documentation that's been optimized, analyzed, simulated, and turning it into a facility, turning it into a space. And that's what we'll focus on with talking about some of the tools that are out there today that your project partners are currently utilizing, and giving you some where we want to introduce these to you such that you understand them and then maybe can begin to leverage some of the data and information that they're creating through their processes, and you can really capture the value of all of that data such that you then have a better turnover, handover, closeout, and you're going into operations as well armed as possible with as much information, and you're not having to reinvent the wheel once you're closed out and ready to open the doors. So we'll start here. Who is an owner and why would we want to take ownership? Well, we know who the owners are. The owners are, we are the owners. We own, we need to expand our capacity. We need to grow, and we have new markets we need to go into. We have more capacity. We're getting traction with our products. We need to grow. Well, the owners are the people. You are the owners that have those facilities, whether or not you own that facility or are leasing that facility. Ultimately, you own it. You're owning that insofar as you are operating it, right? So why would we want to take ownership of a facility? Again, whether or not we own it or we're leasing it. Why would we want to do that? Well, because of the capability and ownership. What are we referring to? The information. And that's why we want to get involved and be more in tune with the people in our phase that we're focusing on today, pre-construction, CM, and closeout, want to understand what they're doing such that we can then, again, leverage and capture the value in the data that they've provided us, or that they've created and ultimately give us at the end of the construction project. So what are some of the things that as manufacturers you are looking to, what are some of the outcomes and what some of the drivers for really implementing change or implementing technology, et cetera? These are things that are fairly standardized across business generally, but ultimately, what are we wanting to do, and how can we affect those changes, and or what can we do to implement tools that allow us to gain things like operational efficiency, things like having optimized factories such that you have production that's running smoothly, expanding your services, and again, adding new product lines, whatever that case may be. Having better collaboration. Is that collaboration between just you and design teams, or could it be collaboration that has a broader data set and has more people involved with the collaboration? Again, maybe your construction teams, things like that. That's really the point that we're trying to get across today. And we'll see that these things certainly align with some of our owners' outcomes. Again, you as a manufacturer, as we're focusing on today, you are an owner as well. And of course, as an owner, you want to have as strong of a portfolio in this context of your facilities. You want to have operationally efficient facilities. You want those facilities to be to come together as quickly and efficiently on schedule, under budget as possible. Well, what we want to focus on today is how can we be involved in that situation and potentially have effect on that aspect of it, rather than just hoping that what we get at the end of it is going to be exactly what we wanted, instead of being able to be involved, have transparency and visibility through that process, and hopefully have some impact on it. So this is where we start to dig into the meat and potatoes of the Autodesk portfolio, and why there's potential and there's reason to not only for owners, but obviously for the industry, construction industry, et cetera, design industry as well, to take a look at introducing things like a common data environment, the single source of truth, things that we've talked about and heard all in the past. What are some of the most impactful things, and things that cost us ultimately over the life cycle, certainly through design and construction? Well, time is wasted on communication not working appropriately and losing track of things. So time is wasted in that regard, and that's extremely costly. Our labor is our time, and having inefficient labor is costly, right? Rework. So again, information, making sure that we have the most up-to-date information, that is what causes us rework. If we don't have it, if we're out of date and we're building it and it's not correct, that's going to cost us a lot of money. Making sure that those rework costs, that data, that communication, all of that really has a huge impact on us as an owner. We just have to accept that? No. If we put in place some of these tools and these processes and workflows, we have impact on that outcome, and we can drive a better outcome such that when we take over, we're ensuring that we have the schedule met, and that cost was kept as low as possible. Being informed with data. So what we can do with some of these, with some of the tools that we'll learn about in a moment, we can effectively streamline, manage, and reduce the impact of that last slide, and reducing rework, enhancing our communication, having the single source of truth. So, are people using too many different platforms instead of having a single source of truth that houses all of our data that's accessible easily to all of the stakeholders? Do we have project costs being met, and or if so, where is that money going to? Are we having to manage, or I'm sorry, are we having to reduce risk and keep an eye out on things that are inefficiently being delivered or built and so on and so forth? Is that money being spent efficiently, or would we rather that money be spent on solid design, constructible buildings, such that we have a cleaner, safer environment and it's a smoother process? Cloud-based. Do we have, and what are we getting at with cloud-based? Obviously, just really in overall making sure that it's accessible and accessible to all who need the access, whether they are the delivery folks, PMs, stakeholders, the labor, whoever. Making sure that we have that single source of truth and it's accessible can reduce the amount of time we spend both in accessing data, answering our questions, making sure that there's accessibility to all who need that time. What's our most expensive thing? It's our labor. If our labor is used efficiently, that is going to render a better process and a better deliverable. So one of the things we want to focus on as the instituting a common data environment is going to reduce those issues of, again, access and streamline the communication, reduce time and so on, and coordination efforts are enhanced. But ultimately, all of that is in pursuit of making sure that we've arrived at a efficient building, and then that digital factory that we've been focusing on for this series, that is where we're going to render the most value. If we have a building that was delivered appropriately and the data set that is able to be leveraged downstream, that is where we're going to gain value, because 80% of our overall life cycle cost of a building is in operations. So we need to make sure that if we begin with the end in mind, we have built a solid data set, we've been involved in that, ensuring that it's what we need to operate. It gives us the right data to operate efficiently, such that we save as much money on the operations, and we're arming our facilities people with as much information as possible, as accessible as possible. All of that leads up to where were we and where do we want to go, and then what tools can we use to get there? So right now, or I should say, in the past, we had fragmented data. We weren't able to go and work together. We have, and to this day, we do it. I talk to people, we all talk to people every day. We're still in this world of fragmented sources of truth. We don't have the ability to go and access something that was emailed to us, or a photo that was uploaded in, like we talked about, those 3 different platforms or more. It's just not accessible to this person, where it's hidden in some folder on a network drive rather than in the cloud, or it's in your email and that person's moved on, something like that. So having a central repository is going to increase transparency, visibility, etc. So that's where we introduce something like a common data environment, single source of truth, for instance, Autodesk Docs. And all of this is important because we as an owner can institute Autodesk Docs as that central source of truth for our project teams, design teams, etc. There's all kinds of capabilities to be functional within some of the tools that you're currently using, potentially not on the AEC side, but rather with your Vault or with your Inventor and all these things. There's collaboration capability in between these with this Autodesk Docs, and it extends that visibility and access down to folks on the other side of the table that we're focused on today, the pre-con, the construction teams, the those who are actually building that facility. And you can see all of these people can collaborate and be involved. So here we want to focus on conceptual. Hey, we can impact with a single source of truth all across the life cycle, the phases, the design phase, the planning phase, the building phase, and of course, really most importantly, a digital factory, a digital twin of our facility, the operations phase. As we discussed, 80% of our life cycle cost is spent there. And like I said, also, notice that in a single source of truth, common data environment, again, such as docs, you have the ability to consume all kinds of different data, interoperable information, and just really have the ability to access, let alone collaborate on and work in between different stakeholders and users and teams. But again, you can see photos, models, drawings, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, whatever the case is, all of those data are accessible and actionable within this single source of truth on the Autodesk Construction Cloud. All right, this is a busy slide, and by all means, I want to, if you have questions about it, we're going to dig into, at least to a degree, each of these pieces. But ultimately, the Autodesk Construction Cloud as a whole is a number of tools that essentially ride on top of the Autodesk Docs common data environment. So whether if you work from left to right, if we're talking about the design phases and you're in your plant building out in Plant 3D, you're collaborating with, you're creating those P&IDs and developing process piping design. Well, you're collaborating with those in Revit, whether it's the design team in the BIM world or the trade coordination team in Revit as well, or Navisworks for that matter. But ultimately, you're sharing information, collaborating, and producing designs, again, whether it's the interior of the building or the envelope of your building. Those platforms come together in the design phase. We'll touch on the interior of this matrix here with the assemble, takeoff, and so on here in the next few slides. But really, a large part of this is the build side, where we want to leverage the project management and be able to collaborate. If we, as an owner, are able to consider the value that we gain for transparency, visibility, insights, and information that we can capture within the build environment, and we have access to that information that our construction and subcontractors, et cetera, are creating, we're going to ultimately increase the access, but we're also really going to enhance what that overall ending deliverable, the closeout, what we're handed over, we're able to go and move into operations, such as this digital twin, the digital factory that is the overall goal. We're able to arrive at a better handover product, which is going to afford us the ability to be off and running day one, rather than having to potentially go and reinvent the wheel and figure out what happened throughout that construction project lifecycle. All right, so we'll start here again, a little bit about docs. Just we're going to touch on each of these tools, but just at a very high level. And again, if you have questions or anything you want to discuss, please reach out and we can dive in deeper. But ultimately, document control and access, creating reviews, approvals, workflows, things like that, making sure that you're always up to date with the current versions, things like that. That's the Autodesk Docs single source of truth platform. It allows us to go and, again, have all of our collaborators design all the way through pre-construction into construction, have these people sharing data that is again, collaborative, and it stretches the entire life cycle. As we spoke of earlier, that design side, BIM collaborate, all of this information that is in the design phase, this is riding on top of docs. So you see document management, well, it's riding on top of docs. So that information in design is accessible and available to your design teams here in BIM Collaborate and in the BIM Collaborate environment. And one aspect of it that we want to focus on also is the ability to perform automated clash detection. There's other tools like a Navisworks, things like that, that are very valuable and that are at the heartbeat of the construction environment and phase, but ultimately the model coordination tool is really growing in its accessibility and capabilities within this, within the design coordination, let alone trade coordination phase. All right, we will quickly jump to Assemble. And the Assemble platform has a number of really powerful aspects to it, whether it be, it starts off kind of on the top level things is model conditioning, allowing people who are not Revit users, typical design software users to get into that design environment and really pick it apart and or even add their own metadata that can be infused back into a Revit model, things like that. So it extends the capabilities and it allows us to do simulation, 4D simulation, as we referred to kind of in one of our last webcasts, talking about how we can do that simulation and understand how things come together in this construction phase. It's very, very important. Work in place tracking, and there's a web app, or I should say the mobile capability to access this information on your mobile device, which we'll talk about and comes up later as well. Takeoff, similar to Assemble, you can perform takeoff, quantity estimating, and quantity capturing, getting all of your inventory, understanding you've got 10 of these, 5 of these. This allows us to do in both 2D and 3D. So that model-based takeoff capability that can be part of our estimating process, which you may or may not be involved in. But again, we're just trying to help you understand these are some of the things that your collaborators, your contractors are doing today. And again, being involved, accessing their information helps us to understand. And one of the greatest things about the Autodesk platform is, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So you can imagine being able to do this in both 2D and 3D. It really enhances that capability. And I'll hand over to Adam.
Hey, Alan, great job. A lot of information that we're digesting today. But as such, with all this information, there's plenty of tools as we're depicting here to help us decipher this information and empower our teams simultaneously. So ProEst is another estimating program offered by Autodesk. Like Takeoff, you could track those documents with that information so you could assemble your estimates when it comes time to gauging or building budgets for your project. So ProEst is that database environment that allows you to generate costs down to the nuts and bolts of a wall construction assembly or down to the concrete assembly of rebar and formwork. So a lot of capabilities here to build out databases or subscribe to databases so you could generate more accurate budgets when it comes time to scope those out, whether you're looking at a renovation of a facility or a new construction project. So that's kind of the high level take on ProEst there. And then diving down to BuildingConnected. So once we've generated our bids and have a quite rough idea of what that project might cost our team, we could start distributing this information down to our subcontractors and vendors in a platform such as BuildingConnected, where then you could invite your existing database of contractors or scope out additional vendors and subcontractors based on the based on your project's location, I should say. And so it'll help you level your bids when it comes time to assess the proposals that you've acquired from your subcontractors and vendors. So that way you're truly capturing and comparing costs apples to apples. And then additionally, there's applications such as TradeTapp and BidBoard. TradeTapp being an application for your general contractors and owners where you could ensure that the subcontractors and vendors that you're reaching out for proposals, that their documentation aligns with your project requirements, whether that's lien waivers or insurance forms. So that way you could do your pre-qualifications all up front and ensure that you've got the right team players as you progress into getting your project out of the ground. Alan, is there anything I missed on that?
Yeah,
I
I
mean, a lot of information.
absolutely. And I think that this is something that we can, as an owner, really put some thought into. So again, are you expanding? Are you trying to grow your markets, working on, do you have new capital expenditures, understanding that we need to grow, we need to increase production? Really, what we want to focus on with this tool is if we need to move into new geographies, who are we going to work with? We may not really have an idea of the contractors that are in, again, maybe if we're 2 states over, wherever we may be, we don't know who's there. So we as an owner want to make sure that we're digesting the network. This is essentially the BuildingConnected network is really kind of the LinkedIn for contractors and businesses in the construction world, and it allows us to see, okay, these folks are they're solid financially, or they have good E&R scores, and they're safe. They're not going to go belly up on me. Things like that, where we now understand these new geographies, and we can go and capture those companies that we want to partner with, that we know are going to be that good construction partner. So yeah, I think this is a powerful tool that certainly can give us insight into the network that we may not be involved in and not understand. And again, in a growth footing, it could really be handy to know, to have this this book of metadata about companies. All right, and kind of want to start here with the start of the show. The ACC, very basic background history, very quickly. About a decade ago, Autodesk identified and realized that there was some gaps in the construction industry, and they went and acquired what was PlanGrid, and it was an industry-leading documentation and construction management platform, allowing you to do all the markups and all the things that you can do back in the day. And they acquired that, and then they've taken it and they've merged it with the BIM 360 world. So if you're familiar with that world, and maybe some of your project teams and design have worked in that world, you've heard the terms. Well, what Build has become is the confluence of those two things. The mobile side is the back end, really PlanGrid back end, that has become the Build mobile side, and the BIM 360 side coming together. That gives us that 2D and model capability that is really so valuable throughout the construction project lifecycle. I'll pause here. Sorry, Adam, back to you. Continue with the Build.
So as Alan was saying, Build is a very powerful environment. Where you could invite your entire project team to ensure that they're all looking at the latest and greatest bit of information, whether that's P&IDs, routing, and the equipment associated with that. A lot of information that could be captured, tag issues along, so you could capture your assets and track where those items are in the process of install, or whether are we tracking those assets as they make their way from a factory to a staging area on the construction site. So it really provides that transparency to the team members, so everyone's informed where these various moving pieces are along the life cycle of a project.
Yeah, and I think that there's some things that this is kind of the beginning. We just saw a few products that, again, may or may not be totally applicable to you. That's where our construction teams are going to leverage their, how they're going to go and create their bids. They need to understand what you need in a building and what the design has created. But when we move along here to build, this is where we can begin to, with our pre-construction teams, construction teams, if we as owners have mandates and we have access to, or we've stated, hey, we're going to use, we need you to use Build as your common data environment and your delivery tool. I know, I realize it, I've been in the world, I understand that that can be a touchy situation, but again, it's a discussion with our project teams, ultimately in the pursuit of what we've seen earlier and what we'll see in a moment, this handover and the closeout and having that most comprehensive data set that, again, at the handover, we begin to have the right information that is easily accessible that I can hand over to my facilities group and, again, be as efficient as possible in operations, such that we're not going back to square one, trying to find information from submittals and having to do those things. And when we constitute the common data environment, the single source of truth, remember, that's what Build is running on. If we saw that slide, go back to that slide, Docs is running, I should say, Docs is the foundational aspect of Build. All of the data that you collaborated on, created in design in BIM, for instance, in BIM Collaborate Pro, whether it be 2D, whether it be 3D, Revit, Inventor, some Inventor interoperability, some Navisworks, what have you, all that is accessible in Docs, and again, becomes the accessible database and information, the data set that is available to our project teams. So is it having this as a standard operating procedure as a client, and maybe having an enterprise account to Build and giving our clients, or I should say our construction teams and our collaborators, the ability to go and access this common data environment, we can extend it to all of them, allowing us to make that standard operating procedure. Now, all of my entire lifecycle team up to operations, they're working in my hub, my environment in the ACC. Now I have transparency, I have insights, I have data that's flowing in all the time through these dashboards and insights modules and the Power BI that you can extract on the back end. You're going to be more informed, and you're going to have a powerful, again, that powerful closeout handover data set that you can then go into operations with. All right, and back to you, Adam.
So as mentioned, there's a lot of information that's constantly being entered into a project environment, modified throughout the project's environment, and all that information needs to be, again, captured at some point, and someone needs to build off of it, buy off of it, or operate off of it. So again, a lot of moving components. As such, there's ways to supplement the data. So Autodesk most recently has implemented one of these programs by the name of Pype, which is built off of a couple individual modules. But this starts to empower the team with leveraging technology and AI, so that way the information that's being generated or captured within the construction documents or the construction specifications could be successfully extracted and then passed down to the appropriate team members. So you're able to consume the information and distribute the information that much more seamlessly. So whether that's, again, project requirements and what the makeup needs to be of the concrete that's coming on site, or the various membranes that need to make up of a building envelope, giving plenty of construction examples off the top of my head here, Alan, but these elements that need to be procured, furnished, and installed at some point in the life cycle. So again, Pype helping your teams extract information out of specifications, helping your teams gather closeout documentation from your vendors and subcontractors. So when it comes time to the O&Ms and the warranties, it creates a single environment where you could invite your team players and maintain a pulse and collect that information. So that way you could build up a complete binder when it comes to turnover, and you're no longer dropping off banker boxes or having banker boxes dropped off at your doorstep that needs to be then shuffled through, if you will. So kind of the bookend, help you understand what the project requirements are early on in the course of the project, as well as collect all the project information, so that way you could have a successful turnover. So as Alan mentioned, once you have that ribbon cutting ceremony and you're ready to open doors, your facility team knows and is enabled to hit the ground running.
Absolutely. It's a platform that lets us quickly and easily consume specifications. We as owners work, you're probably working fairly closely with your design team, making sure that they have built, or I should say designed, your facility to your needs and specifications. Well, this is at a high level, it's just a spec consuming tool that allows the people downstream to make sure that they're capturing all those requirements and that they're submitting appropriately on them, and that they are, again, it's that bookend. The front end is the consuming of the specifications and creating submittal logs, and then the back end is that most efficient process, really probably in the market, to create a comprehensive handover document that is going to be accessible and, again, comprehensive for you as the owner. Okay, so a couple more things. This is really where we land. All of the work that we've done up to date in all of these tools has provided us the capability to move downstream into that digital factory, the digital twin. And essentially we will see as time progresses that the digital twin becomes that panacea, becomes the standard operating procedure. And this is really the goal. So what have we done so far? We've collaborated in 2D and 3D. We have the right data set at handover. Now we're able to take that, again, begin with the end in mind. We have all of that robust data set that is now connected. It has hyperlinks. It's accessible to all of our users. As we moved in and had that really powerful handover, day one, I can leverage that information on downstream into our Autodesk Tandem in that digital factory environment. Now, as we operate, you can see we have IoT capabilities, we have information accessible at our hands, mobile as well. So whenever I send my facilities folks out into the building, they're able to they don't even necessarily have to be out into the building, and they're more efficient in reading data, RPMs, whatever it may be, of equipment on site as it operates in context in that BIM environment. And it gives us this operational efficiency that we just don't have yet. And again, this is where we get to the operations phase and we're as efficient as possible. A really powerful capability with Autodesk Tandem in the digital twin space. All right, we've given you untold amounts of information today. So we want to we're going to wrap it up here. So again, what did we talk about today? We talked about the BIM world and the connection of the design moving into construction and the pre-construction phase and how we can capture value and capture and some of the tools that are available to us to really drive better outcomes and have that operation and drive the operational efficiency day one, going out of at the closeout handover, moving into again that ribbon cutting ceremony. So again, this is the collaboration and all of that process moving on into, again, the operations that we just talked about. And that will be our next session coming up on, I think I have it set up here. Yeah, so March 28th. We very much appreciate your listening to us today, talk about something that maybe you as this owner or in the manufacturing space have not considered. And we appreciate you now maybe having a better understanding of what, again, your collaborators that you work with in construction, what they're using, and how we can maybe institute some tools like a Construction Cloud docs platform or a build platform, such that we are now more collaborative. We have transparency, visibility, and data that is going to ultimately drive a more efficient process for the contractors. And ultimately, what matters is that these folks, these businesses that are building our buildings, they're doing these things today. So if we get involved, we take ownership, we're going to be able to leverage the information that is already being created. All right, so on March 25th, the maintain facilities, that's coming up. Please join us then, and we'll be talking about how we can take all the things that we've talked about so far in this series and really compile them and move it into management and be as operationally efficient as possible. And we'll pause there. I understand we are running a little bit long and want to move into some questions.